I am happy to be with you tonight at the first Laureus World Sports Award. Sport has the power to change the world. It has the power to inspire. It has the power to unite people in a way that little else does. It speaks to youth in a language they understand. Sport can create hope where once there was only despair. It is more powerful than governments in breaking down racial barriers. It laughs in the face of all types of discrimination.
So Nelson Mandela happened to say a whole lot in just 5 sentences. So I want to take just a few minutes to talk through his message and the ripple effect it's had on youth all across the world. As many of you know, Nelson Mandela was in prison for 27 years for leading an effort to fight apartheid, which was a system of very oppressive racial segregation that existed for several decades in South Africa. After he was released from prison, soon thereafter, he was released in the early 90s. In 1994, he was elected president of South Africa. And he looked out, among the people of South Africa that had for many, many decades been separated by black and brown and white, and wondered, how in the world am I going to bring all of these people together? And he thought, maybe sport is the answer. When he was in prison, they wouldn't let him, read most of the newspapers or see television or anything, but they would let him read the sports pages. So he was very much a fan of sport. He used to keep track of all the top athletes in the country, and one of them was Francois Pienaar. He was the captain of the national rugby team called the Springboks. And ironically, just a year after Nelson Mandela was elected president, they were going to be hosting the Rugby World Cup in South Africa. And he thought, you know what, I'm going to enlist Francois's help in kind of bringing the country to rally behind our national rugby team, the Springboks. And so this is what happened. I mean, they're hosting the World Cup. They really weren't supposed to do all that well, but they won the first round and the second round and the third round. And they find themselves in the final in this humongous stadium playing the New Zealand All Blacks. One of the top rugby teams in the world still. And they'd never run a World Cup before. But guess what? They won. And the stadium erupted. Nelson Mandela comes down onto the field wearing a Springboks jersey. He shakes the hand of Francois Pienaar, gives this rousing speech, and the whole entire country had been cheering for the national team. And heretofore, the whites would vote for and root for the Springboks, but the blacks in the country actually voted for the British team because they didn't see themselves reflected in the Springboks. And so this was unprecedented to have the whole country supporting their national rugby team. As you may recall, there was a movie called Invictus that chronicled this wonderful story. And it really did, sport really did change the world, or at least it changed South Africa. And what happened was that so many organizations have now come about that have caused sport to change the world, which kind of gets me to my next point, or at least Mandela's next point, which is that sport has the power to inspire. Sport inspired, again, a plethora of new organizations and a new nonprofit sector called Sport for Development. Sport for Development is the intentional use of sport to achieve particular outcomes like education or health and wellness or employability or social cohesion or community cohesion. And sport also inspired a South African businessman named Johan Rupert. He is the CEO of an organization called Richemont, which is a holding company for a bunch of luxury brands. And he was a friend of Nelson Mandela. And he was inspired by this Invictus story he said, gosh, I want to do something. I want to celebrate the power of sport. And so he said, I'm going to create an awards show that celebrates the top sportsmen and women in the world. And so he launched this Laureus World Sports Awards where Mandela gave that speech. And while there, Mandela gives this speech, there are dozens of the world's top athletes at this event, and they were all inspired by hearing. They all wanted to do something, and so Johann Rupert paired up with the folks at Daimler, the parent company of Mercedes-Benz, and together they launched the Laureus Sport for Good Foundation. Now it's a network of 9 foundations across the world, serving 1.5 million youth in 40 different countries, funding 100 different projects. And so, it's happening. Sport inspired this new movement. Sport also inspired the United Nations several years ago to declare April 6th, which happens to be today, as the International Day of Sport for Development and Peace. And so there are organizations and people all over the world today, the International Olympic Committee, Laureus, Sport for Good, obviously, who are celebrating the use of sport to tackle many of the world's most pressing social ills. And so we have organizations now like Laureus. I have the very distinct pleasure of being the CEO of Laureus USA. We have had such success in the past 5 years. We're reaching 500,000 kids across the U.S. We've placed 3,300 coaches trained as mentors in projects all over the country in 82 different cities. And so, collectively, we're seeing that sport has inspired organizations and people to engineer a new form of social impact. And again, that gets me to my next point, is that sport has the power to unite people in a way that little else does. A few years ago, actually, a little over 2 years ago, Laureus USA began to unite people in the city of New Orleans by using sport. We launched Laureus Sport for Good New Orleans, which is our Model City initiative. It is an initiative which is a long-term initiative to bring youth sport to first identify which challenges are youth facing in this particular city, and then harness the power of sport to address those challenges. We are now funding 6 organizations in New Orleans. They are doing amazing work. And we've also built a coalition, a cross-sector coalition of organizations around them. So they are government, corporate, education, nonprofits, and they're all, the Parks and Rec in the city, and they've come together with these 6 organizations leading them to have some shared goals, some shared metrics, and Laureus provides a backbone for this collective impact strategy in New Orleans. And as a result of the infusion of funding, and their being able to increase staff, the professional development that we've provided to them, those 6 organizations who were 2 years ago serving 10,000 kids are now serving over 50,000 kids. And so we're seeing that this is having a ripple effect in New Orleans. One of those projects is called Elevate. There's a young man by the name of Sky Hyacinth. He was born in the Bronx, lived in a 2-room house, and his parents, struggled to make ends meet. He is pictured there, coaching his athletes. His family lived often in drug-infested communities, and he used the sport of basketball, as an escape. And he worked hard at basketball, he worked hard at school. He ended up getting a full basketball scholarship to UConn. And he graduated, and he went on to have a career in marketing. He worked for ESPN for a while, for Omnicom for a while, marketing, communications. And he was friends with one of his former UConn classmates, and they went down to New Orleans for some event. And so while he was there, wherever he goes, he would go seek out a basketball court to blow off some steam, and he went to this basketball court, a bunch of kids running around, and they were excited to have somebody there to kind of tutor them and coach them and teach them some tips. And he went back day after day, day after day. And at one point, this young boy comes up to Sky and he says, you know, I'm so excited to have you back. I really didn't think you'd come back. He said, yeah, why would you think I'd come back? He said, well, nobody really in my life, I don't think anybody really loves me, you know? And it really struck a chord with Sky, and he thought to myself, oh my gosh, I need to do something. And so he dropped his wonderful 6-figure job and his nice life in New York, and he moved to New Orleans, and he started a program called Elevate. And Elevate is really a educational enrichment and basketball skills enrichment program. And they have to maintain a 3.0 grade point average. They have to do their tutoring. They have all kinds of wonderful academic enrichment for the kids. They can't get on the court until they've done their homework, and unless they have maintained this grade point average. And when they get on the court, they get top-notch basketball training. So much so that the 18 student athletes who have graduated through his program, all 18 of them have gotten college basketball scholarships. Amazing, right? So sport is definitely uniting the city of New Orleans and really helping to elevate the youth in that program in the process. The next point in Mandela's speech was that sport speaks to youth in a language they understand. You know, sport's fun, and it's a hook to get the kids into a program. If you told them, oh, let's go to a youth development program, or let's go seek some counseling, or I have some tutoring for you, or something like that, you know, the kids probably, nah, that's all right, you know. But if you say, let's go play some basketball, some soccer, I mean, it's a hook, it gets them in, and then they learn all the life skills along the way that you have to teach them. And champion athletes also speak in a language that kids understand. Excellence, hard work, perseverance, the thrill of victory, the agony of defeat, the joy of reaching your personal best. And we have the very good fortune at Laureus of having a network of 200 plus of the most iconic athletes in the world supporting our cause. People like skateboarder Tony Hawk, or NFL Hall of Famer Marcus Allen, NBA star Chris Paul, swimmer, I can't think of her name all of a sudden, Missy Franklin, gymnastics legend Nadia Comaneci. She's on my board, like so cool. These athletes have devoted their time. They go visit projects. They lend their name and their platform to help promote our mission. And they can relate to how the language of sport has transformed their lives. And I, too, as an Olympic gold medalist, can relate to that as well. I call my gold medal the gift that keeps on giving. I feel like certainly a great, awesome opportunity to stand on the victory stand in LA, but the lessons that I learned around the self-confidence I got, the lessons about how to be a leader, how to be part of a team, how to set goals, how to power through obstacles or hurdles that got in my way. I was born, I might as well just say it, 1961. It was before the Civil Rights Act was passed or the Voting Rights Act was passed. I mean, I became of age in the 60s and 70s with the backdrop of the Civil Rights Movement, the women's movement. Title IX was passed while I was in middle school. My mom helped to desegregate the public school system right here in Prince William County in Northern Virginia. I was the first black student to go to my elementary school in the first grade, so I integrated my elementary school. I did a lot of trial and error. My parents are both educators, and they really instilled in my sister and me that yes, we got to get good grades, we got to, be strong students, but they also introduced a lot of extracurricular activities because they wanted us to be well-rounded. So I tried softball, majorettes, I tried gymnastics, believe it or not, violin. I wasn't good at any of that stuff, really, but I enjoyed the process of learning, the friendships I made. I even got to be most improved in my majorette troupe. I got a trophy for that. And, but at the same time, as an 11-year-old girl, I found myself, a victim in some cases of some bullying, both in my classroom and in my neighborhood. The black neighborhood I grew up in until I was 8, the all-white neighborhood I lived in after that. I had low self-esteem, low self-confidence. I hadn't really found my place, the thing that that brought me joy, that I was excited about. Until my gymnastics coach in middle school, Gwen Washington, said, "Hey, Benita, I see that you beat all the girls and even the boys in PE class. You need to come out for the track team." It's kind of one of those things where you have a toddler and they're getting in something they shouldn't be, and you just kind of redirect them. And she kind of redirected me away from the sport that I wasn't so good at, but I loved. I thought I was going to be, Olga Corbett or Nadia Comaneci at 5'10", and yeah, not really. And she redirected me over to track and field, and I got on that track, and I won every event I tried the first time out. I found my joy. That was the language that I understood, right? And I ended up, that was 7th grade, I ended up first chair flute in the band. I was student of the year. When I finished 8th grade, I went on to high school, become a state champion, first chair flute and piccolo, played solos and the band and orchestra, made my first national team at 16. I became from this kind of, tall, lanky, skinny girl. I used that tall, lanky skinniness to be a great champion, and it transformed my life in the process. And so, yes, sport does have the power to speak to youth in a language that they understand. Another is that, I'm trying to think of the next part. Sport can create hope where once there was only despair. So every child is born with limitless possibilities and potential, but all too often people are born into circumstances that are really ugly. And the good news is that athletes and kids who participate in these sports-based youth development programs really find themselves in programs that take away that despair and give them hope. Fight for Peace is a wonderful program that uses boxing to help kids get out of the horrible slums in Jamaica and Brazil. There's another one called Magic Bus. They're in India. They bring hope to kids in this vicious cycle of poverty in India. They use physical education-based learning to do that. There's another organization called Peace Players International. They use basketball in conflict zones to bring kids together and help them understand how to communicate and get along with people of a different ethnicity, warring ethnic groups in some cases. I had the great pleasure a few months ago, of meeting 2 young women. That one is an Arab girl from Palestine, and another is a Jewish girl from Israel. The 2 of them participated in Peace Players International. The 2 of them probably should never have met, but they met through Peace Players. They played on the same basketball team together. They learned how to communicate, and she's not a monster, nor is she a monster, right? I mean, they're just a girl just like me, and they became best friends. And this is the power of sport to bring people together who otherwise wouldn't, and probably would generally hate each other, right? And now the 2 girls work for Peace Players International. their coordinator and a coach, and that's how I met them. We had 100 projects, a couple, 300 people in Germany all together to share best practices, and they are just a delight. They're just the best of friends and love each other. And now they're bringing hope to the kids in Israel and Palestine who have faced the same kind of challenges they have. So sport is something we all enjoy as athletes, as coaches, fans, and maybe administrators or spectators. But it really does have this ability to change people's lives. And so what I would encourage us to do is really harness the power of sport to help young people, particularly in underprivileged communities, to reach their full potential and build a successful life. And in the process, we can help fulfill Mandela's mission that sport has the power to change the world, one child at a time. Thank you.